could you please take your seats, please? We reconvene at 12:50 p.m. This meeting is now called back to order. Thank you. And with that, if Jimmy could Jimmy, if you could begin the video. We have a short video from our Senator Lisa Murkowski. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lisa Murkowski here. Although you know and recognize me as Anshawati, Clinton, and Lady of the Land, given to me and was adopted in Ketchikan. I'm honored to be able to speak with you on the 106th annual Thanksgiving convention. I start by acknowledging AMB Grand President Sasha Sobolo, ANS Grand President Cecilia Talario, elders, tribal leaders, and all of our honored guests. You all know very well the proud history of the AMB and ANS. Your organizations were one of the first to advocate for the rights of Alaska Natives back in the 1930s and 40s. You took the risk. You took the lead in a united push in which very long-standing cultural differences were set aside in the fight for a greater good that leads towards respect for all. Know that I'm continuing to work here in the United States Senate to find that same greater good, to allow for fairness and equity. And when we talk about equity, one of the long-standing issues that we have been dealing with for decades, we're starting to gain some momentum on this. And this is our Alaska Native Veterans Land Allotment Equity Act. We passed this at the Energy and Natural Resources Committee just last week. Senator Sullivan and I have been working on this, and with many of you, to establish a program to allow our Alaska Native veterans who had served during the Vietnam War to be able to apply for and receive an allotment of land. The bill also provides a mechanism to identify lands that are available for selection and ensures that individuals will be able to use the land, including for subsistence. So really this is about equity. This is about finally allowing the some 2,800 Alaska Native veterans the right to receive their land. They were fighting honorably for our nation at the time and weren't able to make their selection. So doing right, doing equity is important. We're also continuing to work on other matters that are important to you that are included within our ANCSA Improvement Act, including bringing equity to landless natives in southeastern Alaska. We all, the Native community, local communities, the Forest Service, or your delegation, we need to continue to work together to build consensus on this important issue. Now, as important as our lands are, our waters must also be healthy in order to sustain us. I've been working to increase or to continue funding for numerous research programs covering everything from fishery stock assessments to ocean acidification and marine debris. The sound management of Alaska's ocean resources is contingent on strong science in order to ensure that both commercial and subsistence harvesters can continue their way of life. We have to make sure that we have the tools to study, predict, and plan for any changes in the marine environment that might affect marine mammal or fish populations. Other things that we're working on, we continue to work with the delegation and the governor and the lieutenant governor on transboundary water issues. This year it was very important to make sure that we have strong funding for the Pacific Coastal Salmon Recovery Fund and implementation of the Pacific Salmon Treaty. I know an issue that involves so many there in Southeast is the sea otter. We have been working to make sure that funding for the Marine Mammal Commission is in place to ensure co-management and tribal consultation are supported. So We're talking about healthy waters, healthy land, but also healthy people. That's something that we all desire. So we've been working on some legislative initiatives that have been important for us. We all know the epidemic with the opioid impact, opioid addiction in the state and really around the country. That legislation has just been signed into law by the president. I've also joined with a bipartisan group of Senate colleagues in introducing the Native American Suicide Prevention Act. This legislation would help address the alarming suicide rate in so many of our communities by requiring collaboration among state governments and tribal communities to develop and implement statewide suicide early intervention and prevention strategies. This will help ensure your communities are not left out of the planning and execution of these important programs, because it's only going to happen together. It's only going to happen with all of us working together that we are able to give Alaskan families the help and support that they need. So just this has been a brief recap. There's clearly a great deal going on in Washington, D.C. So I just appreciate you giving me an opportunity to give you a little bit of an update. But as you come together in Ketchikan this week to celebrate and honor your communities, I again want to say Ganesh Jish, thank you for all that you do to support the rights, traditions, and livelihoods of your Alaska Native brothers and sisters. Take care.
Thank you so much for that telephonic address, Senator Lisa Murkowski. Hello from the delegation, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you.
At this time, if we have no objections, I would request the privilege of the floor for Senator Begich.
No objections.
Hearing no objections, I would ask that Kelsey, where's Kelsey?
Cecilia? Cecilia. Up here. Yes. Yes. Hi, Mark.
See you. Thank you very much. Well,
First, thank you very much, and it's always good to see old friends and be able to talk about the future of Alaska. But again, thank you very much. I flew down this morning, or last night, to Juneau, here this morning, then I got to leave tonight to get back to AFN in order to be back there for the time. But again, thanks, Sasha, for the invitation. Thanks to Grand President Cecilia for this opportunity to be here at the table and be able to say a few words. Also, you know, I remember, and I probably never get it right 100%, but I was very honored to be adopted into the Killer Well clan. My name is Kawasteen, and former President Bill Martin was able to adopt me or allow me to be adopted, and so thank you very much for that honor and being able to be here. I will say this, I know in coming to Grand Camp, this is what's going to happen. I walk through the door, first thing they're checking is my membership. And here's what they do, I love it. Here's what they do, they first say, here's your membership. Well, this isn't a membership. This is, I know, it was incredible. And then I said, this is my membership. And so you got me coming and going no matter what. So I'm hoping I win the split the pot. But I loved it. It was like I couldn't get through that glass door before they said, what's your membership? Have you paid up? And the answer is yes. Usually the second question is, where's your hat? And you asked it also, which I appreciate. It's actually sitting on my son's desk. Oh, there's one. One's sitting on my son's desk right now. Make sure I put it on the right way, right? Yes. See, the problem was the one they gave me was small because I have a big head. I will admit that. Is that
Very nice.
okay? Again, thank you very much. And let me say, you know, I have to say, being adopted into the Killer Whale clan, you know, the goal of it is the protectors and the guardian of the seals on oncoming killer whales. And I feel like that right now, every day in my campaign. I have to be fair with you on that. But I also feel it for the state. The state has great challenges. Great challenges in what we're going to do to make sure we have a great growing education system, a safer community, making sure we have an economy that's diversified than where we are today. But it is an important part of where we are as a state and understanding where we're going to go into the future. You know, when I flew down last night, I will give you, and I was just talking to Emil Nadi, and it reminds me a lot about history. Yesterday, I flew down on a very important date in our family. It's the same day, October 16th, that my father was lost on a plane coming from Anchorage to Juneau. So I flew on that same day. And you think of things in an unusual way. You think of history, where we have been, and what it means to the future. You know, I remember as a young kid, I was 10 when my father passed, so I learned more about him from people in this room, elders in this room, who knew him in some form or another, or Emil, who reminded me again today, which I appreciate his work on the Native Land Claims Act and my father's work on the Native Land Claims Act. And it was an amazing thing when you think about it. Instilled in our family is the desire, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the complications are, what the challenges we face as a state, you don't sit on the sidelines. You step up to the plate and you try to solve problems. You don't hesitate from big challenges. And I remember when someone came to me and then I read a book that was put together by many of my dad's former colleagues, and it said, you know, in 2 years, because that's all he served, was able to help move forward an issue that had been struggling for decades. And I will not say it's just my father, but it was the combination of people. The Native Land Claims Act that today we reap great benefits from. It continues as an experiment of a better way to treat people, the first people of this nation and of this state. And when you think about it, history teaches us a great deal. Where we are today, the statistics for Alaska are not bright. And I say that only because that's what the statistics tell us. Highest unemployment, highest crime rate in the nation, the lowest, we're in the bottom 5 now out of 50 states in education attainment. But the one thing we know as Alaskans, we are not afraid about these challenges. We think about them, about the future of our great state and figuring out what we can do. I remember a young man I met up in a small village up in western Alaska, and I remember sitting there, it's probably about 7, 8 years ago, and I'm sitting next to him, and he's working on, at that time, a new technology, 3D printing. And he was printing this item that he was doing for his school raffle. And I said, what are you making? He explained it all to me and how this 3D printer worked. The first time I had seen a 3D printer. Amazing technology. Here in a rural community in Alaska. And the gentleman, the young man was a 9th grader, and I leaned over to him and I said to him, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? And he paused and he looked at me and said, you don't want to know what I would be doing. And why I tell you this story is because we have to instill this great hope in our young people if we want to be the state that we know we can be, to do everything we can to be better than where we are today. So what we do today is a benefit for the generations to come. And when I saw that young man, it reminded me that there are so many young people in our state, especially today, that have lost a little bit of this hopeless. They feel like the state has given up on them in some ways. You know, I got into this campaign for governor because I believed in this example of this young man, that he believed that he could do something to change his life. And his life and his change can impact so many more. This race is about that. It's about who will lead the state, not only in the next session of the legislature, but for the next 10, 20 years of making decisions today. How do we make sure that the young person knows they have a future? Or my 16-year-old son who said to me recently, as he was thinking of colleges and universities and where he wants to go, he says to me, I'm not sure I need to come back to Alaska because I'm not sure what's here for me. Now when you think about that, you know, my son has lots of opportunities, and when he says that, I know we have challenges. But every day I wake up, I know from my mom's instilling us in our 6 kids, you know, she was 34 when my father died, and our youngest was 4 years old. 4 brothers, I don't know how she survived them, to be frank with you. But she always reminded us that don't be afraid to take on great challenges. Because if you sit on the sidelines, you'll never be able to participate and make things happen. And I think about this in this race. It's a complicated race. It's gotten more complicated. But this is about the future. It is about those young people and the people who are not here at Grand Camp today, that you all represent in your own right. People who are working 2, 3 jobs trying to make it. Trying to make sure they have enough fish on the table, working subsistence, and may not, because they had a bad season. That's who you represent. That's who I hope to represent. But we forget in this world of politics today, which is the most disturbing part, it's so toxic and negative and angry. I try not to watch news anymore at night, because it's just not very uplifting. But we do need to have an uplifting feel out there. We need to inspire people. Make sure that young person sees the future. So they say, I want to be at Grand Camp. I want to lead my community. I want to run for governor. I want to run for U.S. Senate. I want to do something to make a difference. This is what we have to do. As governor, you know, I look at all these issues, you know, when it comes to crime and the things we could do to make our community safer, because if you don't have a safe community, it doesn't matter how good the jobs are. People don't want to stay, and we have to make it safe. We have to think of our education. These young people who aren't able to make it through education, our biggest common denominator in our corrections institutions, are most people in our correctional institutions don't have an education higher than an 8th grade. We can do better than that. We can ensure that these young people who maybe are early stages of trying to figure out what they're going to do in their life, maybe on the verge of getting in trouble of some sort, make sure they have good guidance, good mentors, good education. When you think of the jobs, you know, I was down in, or up in Anchorage recently, and I was at a small little event, and there was a group of Filipino women who said to me, they're nurses, you know, here we have an incredible economy, the healthcare industry, 1,400 jobs created last year alone. But if you want to be a nurse, it will take you 2 years just to get into the program. Let alone, once you graduate, you'll get a job like that. 27% of our educators in our state are from Alaska. The rest are not. You know, my parents were teachers. My sisters are teachers. My sister-in-laws are teachers. We can do better than that. We can grow our own here. There are so many young people that I see that want to participate, but they are looking for the leadership and the motivation and the innovation to make sure they see their hope. When I think of the economy that we live in today, and I was at an 8A company recently in Anchorage, and the person who's running it is 30 years old. This company's valuation by June of this year will be $350 million. This was their idea. They created this company. And you think about it, and I remember going to the office, she was a young woman, she sat there, she explained her company idea, and I'm thinking, oh, this is probably just pie in the sky because the way she was describing it. This is follow me. And I went through this other door, that high security, went through this other door, and here's a group of young people working on this new technology around unmanned aircraft and how they have created a patented product right here in Alaska with their idea, their ability. They went and raised $3.5 million from Alaskans to bring this company to reality. Now they're working for FedEx, Amazon, big companies to produce their product in Alaska, and this young woman who's 30 years old. These are the folks that I see as the future of Alaska. I see them every single day. This race is about that. It's what we're going to do to make sure that this generation here provides for the generations to come, giving them the pathway for the future. One issue that I know I hear a lot, especially in rural Alaska, is the cut in the dividend. Now, we can argue over was it wise, was it not? The point is, it had impact. It had impact. When I was up in Queetluck, I was in the bingo hall. It was empty. I was talking to the tribal folks in the sense of what was going on. They said, oh, bingo's down. And part of me says, oh, okay, what does that mean? He said, well, that money pays for our tribal police. So now we don't have a tribal police officer. And I said, why? He said, because the dividend was cut and that money's not circulated in our economy. Just in the Yukon-Kuskokwim district, $70 million is no longer in that economy in the last 3 years because of the dividend cut. Who it impacted the most was the people who could least afford it. It was the most regressive attack on individuals I've ever seen. We have to do better. We have to have a balanced budget for the state. But let's not keep putting it on the backs of people who cannot afford it. That's what they did. And my plan is to make sure we do it the right way, constitutionally protect the dividend, but make it rational and sustainable for times to come. That's how we have to do this. Because the reality, when you think of rural Alaska, especially up north, it's where the resources come from. The wealth of this state comes from the rural parts of our state. Why would we extract and then penalize? It makes no sense. So my plan is to do something a little different. Let me end on this because I know you have a long meeting and I appreciate that. I'm going to leave some material because what campaign doesn't have propaganda to pass out? I'll leave some back there, but please take a look at this election. You all and many more can make a difference. There's a lot of turmoil right now, a lot of turmoil. And I will say this, I think we have to think of one thing here. The viability of who can win this election. Because Senator Dunleavy is not good for Alaska. And I'll be blunt about it. You know, his idea of education is to round up kids in the villages and just throw them in boarding schools. That's his idea. He said it. You know, well, I thought he was going back to the 1950s. He's going back to the 1800s. I mean, that is unbelievable. When he talked about fighting crime, he cut everything. Prosecutors, troopers, corrections officers. He set the stage for where we're facing today. When he talked about education, he wants a voucher system. So in a small village, the parent will get a voucher to go to a school. The problem is, there's only one school. It's not going to work. And it's going to jeopardize public education, the greatest equalizer of anything. His ideas will hurt Alaska. And again, not this, just this generation, but generations to come. What you do individually, collectively, can make a difference. This will be a tough race. I can't tell you what it's going to look like over the next couple of days, but I'll tell you, it's a changing times. We believe we can win. We can win with the right support. You all have been good friends of mine for years. You've been good friends, some of the elders here, of my dad and my mother when she ran for Congress. And I appreciate that. Your help would make a significant difference and send a message that it's about unity, moving together, and looking out for the best of Alaska, not dividing ourselves over politics, but unifying ourselves over what's right. So thank you for the time, thank you for this moment, and I really appreciate giving me these few times in your busy agenda and resting the rules. Madam President, thank you very much. Thank you.
She's ready to talk.
Now, whose hat did I steal? I don't want to be told I took the hat.
Are we taking questions from the floor?
Person that wants to respond.
The emeritus, Strata emeritus is trying to get your attention. She has her own.
Mom,
We have time for 2 questions.
Grand Emeritus
I just
first.
want
Grand Emeritus Mary Jones.
You have to excuse me for sitting. If William Hall was here, he never let a politician get out scot-free. And he would say, if you're going to join, you come with your wallet. And now he's coming for votes from us, and it's going to cost you. So I make a motion that we fine candidate Begich $50 for soliciting our votes.
I would be happy to do that. Then I'm going to do this also. I got my split the pot tickets, so I'm going to give them to you. And because I'll be on a plane probably, so if you win, you must donate it back for the programs here. How's that? Is that a fair deal?
Oh, she wants more. We need it. You have to stand here while we get a second.
There was a second
No second.
question.
Questions?
Question.
There's been a motion and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Unanimous consent.
Call for unanimous consent. So move.
So I
Thank
got to take it
you.
in my pocket, is that?
Yes, to our Sergeant at Arms.
Look at, I'm doing it right now, look at this. I'm paying my fine.
Thank you, Madam A&S Grand Emeritus Mary Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take my hat. One more question. Here we go. Harriet.
Brother Harriet.
I did promise my daughter Annette in Anchorage. We drove down the highway from Anchorage to Hayes, got on the ferry boat to Juneau, and then from Juneau over here. Anyway, Mark, could you give your view on our permanent fund? Because many people are kind of worried. We're worried that our future generations will not get the benefits from the oil industry. And I know the other candidates have their views. I was wondering about yours.
Eric, thank you very much. And I'll leave, there's a small card back there that gives a little more detail, but the idea is that we would constitutionally protect it. Right now, there's a thing called a percent of market value, which determines the cash that comes from the earnings of the permanent fund. I would take 50% of that, that would go into the permanent fund. The dividend program, constitutionally protecting it, would be about $2,100 this year. The other 50% would go into education, constitutionally protecting it, and funding early education. You know, 0 to 5, young people, 90% of their brain development occurs during that time. But the idea is these two items would be constitutionally protected. They'd go to the vote, you'd all vote on it, and then no longer can the politicians mess with the dividend or mess with education. It will be out of their hands and in the public's hands for the first time. That's the idea, and I'll be happy. I'm the only one that's proposing to put this in the Constitution, and again, I'll leave some material back there for folks to look at. But thank you very much, Area.
Thank you, Jeremy. Show the card. Your father.
Senator Begich will be available for questions afterward. Yes, Chair recognizes Richard, Grand Emeritus.
I raised my hand, Emil Nadi was up before me, so I defer to Emil Nadi for his objection.
Okay.
I can't hear what he says.
What?
I couldn't hear.
Chair recognizes Emil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emil Nadi, Camp 87. I move that the Grand Camp and Session nominate or endorse Governor Mark Begich.
Do we have a second? State your name, and you can, please.
Harriet B. Neal, Camp 1, Sitka.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes Executive Committee one.
Okay, I'm not clear on this. I remember a while back somebody telling me that the Brotherhood Grand Camp and the Sisterhood Grand Camp could not endorse a political candidate. And I need clarification on that because something about our nonprofit status. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Richard.
Under the, Mr. Chairman, under the IRS nonprofit status 501, C5 is allowable to endorse candidates since 1946, and that's what we have as a nonprofit status. I have checked with the treasurer of the EB Grand Camp who stated this to me.
Chair recognizes Mary Jones, Executive Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From what I recall, in the years that I was involved, in the late 60s, it had nothing to do with the profit status, non-profit or profit. William Paul would get up, and in those years there was an unwritten law that we did not endorse. William Paul said, if the person that did not endorse will remember that you did not support him or her, is one of the reasons they did not endorse. And it's just in the past probably 15, 20 years that they started endorsing. But up until then, like I said, it was an unwritten law. Nothing to do with anything in the bylaws or anything. And that's what was explained to us, and William Paul was real adamant every time we had general election.
Chair recognizes Executive Committeeman Eric Morrison.
Thank you. Historically, I've been looking at the records, and as early as in the 1950s, there's been records regarding debate over supporting gubernatorial, and this one was particularly over Egan, and it was at the A&B Hall in Juneau. And one of the candidates was forbidden to enter the hall to present toward his argument for running for governor because he was clearly a racist. And they supported someone other than Egan, but the debates did occur then. Thank you, Mr. President.
What is your wish? Chair. Yes. Chair recognizes.
Mr. Chair, I move the table.
She moved to table.
Okay, it's tabled. Do we have a second for move to table?
Mr. Chairman, I second that motion.
Mary Guthrie seconds the motion to table.
Not debatable.
Call for the vote. All those in favor of tabling the motion, raise your right hand. All those opposed to the motion, raise your right hand. Motion is tabled. We will now move on to the Credentials Committee. I'd like to call forward Second Vice Sandy Churchill. Would you escort her up, Grand Sergeant at Arms Charlie?
Good afternoon, Credentials Committee. I am Second Vice President Sandra Churchill and my A&B Second Grand Vice President Heather. And we have completed our credentials, so let me start by saying good afternoon, Grand ANS Emeritus Mary Jones, A&B Grand President Emeritus Richard Jackson, ANS Madam Grand President Cecilia Talavero, A&B Grand President Sasha Sobolov, ANS Executive Members, A&B Grand Executive Members, all the ANS and A&B Grand Officers, delegates, alternates, elders, honorable veterans, and distinguished guests. Our credential report as of just a few minutes ago, we have a total of 9 A&B camps, 11 ANS camps. We have delegates, A&B delegates 18, ANS delegates 26, grand officers A&B 5, ANS 6, our executive committee, A&B 4, ANS 5, and 8 alternates. We have a total of 64 votes. We are missing in our credentials, so we have to stay open until we hear from Saxman ANS and Teneke A&B and ANS. We understand they're on their way. And I have the roll call for Grand Secretary.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, this is the initial report we're receiving at this time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, ANS, A and B Second Ground Vice Presidents, for that preliminary credential report. At this time, I believe that we have a member that would like to be recognized, and the Sergeant of Arms. If you could take the microphone. To Frank Elby.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just for to fulfill the protocol, I would officially like to recognize the roll call that the Credentials Committee presented to the Assistant Secretary so that we can fulfill that protocol. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Brother Eric. He would like to officially recognize the preliminary credential report was given to the Secretary. Okay. Thank you, Brother Eric, Executive Council man. Thank you. And the Chair recognizes A and B, Count 49, Brother Frank Elby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Frank Elby. I'm with delegate from A and B Camp 49 in Portland, Oregon. Last year in 2017, we were proud to host the Grand Camp Convention in Portland. Since then, we've been working on a group of ladies. We had so many in our camp and so many were ladies that they decided they'd like to have their own ANS camp. And the A&B has supported that. And so, you know, today Camp 49 has come with a full delegation of A&B. With a full delegation of A&B, Alaska Native Brotherhood, and Alaska Native Sisterhood. Before I make the motion, I'd like to introduce one of our special A&B members. His name is Ali Al-Zayud. He's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Jordanian Air Force. It was the Jordanian Air Force that helped protect coalition forces, which included the United States Armed Services, in fighting the war on terrorism in the Middle East. So if I could get our candidate, or not our candidate, our delegate, Ali, to raise your hand. Ali and his family are here together. His wife is a member of the ANS, and their son, Aaron, is also in the ANS. The rest of us
Thank you, Madam Chair. The charter presented to the Grand Camp in proper order. The Grand Camp, by majority vote, can accept that charter. So I ask the President to come forward and make it. Someone make that motion and second it, and we'll deal with that, and it'll be accepted.
Thank you, President Emeritus Richard Jackson. He has a very good point. The convention has presented with the information that there's a recommendation for that the charter has been presented to the convention to be voted on. Is there a motion to that effect from the floor? Sister Mary?
Mr. Chairman, Mary Brown Amos, Executive Committee, I make a motion that we accept the charter of Camp 49 AMS. Welcome.
It's been moved by Sister Mary and seconded by, I'm sorry, over here, Rise and
Melania Rodriguez, Camp 2.
and seconded by Camp 2. And any discussion? Questions been called for on the motion to accept the application and proceed with the charter for, let me say this one more time, from Camp 49 A and X.
I call for unanimous consent.
Excuse me.
Can we have pictures taken?
Oh, we're going to have pictures taken, trust me. Yes, now.
It's been called.
There's a request for unanimous consent. Are there any objections? So ordered. Welcome. ANS Camp 49. Camp 49, will you come forward? Camp 49, will you come forward? Sisters from Camp 49, will you come forward and put your Kodak smiles on? Get your iPhones out. Here we go, folks.
journey.
Right hand fellowship.
No, Mary, go.
Welcome. Oh, you're back.
Okay, we're gonna get a picture next to the emeritus with you, so you have her picture with you. Now we have record who the emeritus was with you guys. Yeah. You're right, Eric. Now move here.
Way to go. Thank you so much.
Welcome. I love you. Welcome. I'm so happy. Congratulations on your age. So excited.
Where's the microphone? Do we have a microphone?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I alluded to yesterday that this was going to be an historic convention. I challenge you within, if you have a first cup of coffee.
Historic.
As soon as you said.
Cat 14 said to announce that they do have a Dr. Hall who is here if we don't have any EMTs present.
Okay.
If they need any medical. Cat 14.
Okay, you'll announce it.
Is it windy out?
The chair is going to announce that there'll be a brief recess. Stand by. Yeah, really.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the right thing for you to do.
Oh, that's nice. That's perfect. Okay. Yes, that's just
And they
perfect.
did make it, did you need a copy of the post of what the price is? Because they said 12 for the elders and 17 regularly.
What's that?
$17 regularly.
Okay.
And it's $12 for elders.
Okay. You can make that announcement right now.
I think they already did.
Oh, okay. So do I need a poster?
No, do you
Yeah.
need a poster with that?
Oh, I'm sorry. She's
Do you need a poster with that? Just to go
Oh.
with it? Just to show you that it was done?
Yeah. Yes. Here you go. And then if you could give this to Sandy Churchill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm gonna set this up here.
Oh goodness. We need to pray
Oh, I see, and then this would have
for
gone.
You want to
everybody.
get the Behringer and all this stuff, and then I'll get the. Yep.
Go back to We're putting it away now.
Put it away.
We just got it out.
Sister Mary.
How are you doing?
And that.
welcome.
Test, 1, 2. 1, 2.
Should be good now. Unless it causes you confusion. I have my glasses right here. We're getting regrouped here.
The mic's here. Trying to find that mic, is it there?
There's 2 mics.
Are there? Okay.
Yeah. 3-minute standby. 3-minute standby.
Test, 1, 2. Test, 1, 2.
Number 3.
A little bit. You want it on here?
Yes, for now, thank you. Can you move this?
There, I'll take it right away.
Okay. And this one is.
I don't know. Oh, you know what? I think that's Jimmy's. For the streaming? I think. I think so. Okay. This is not ours.
Yeah, okay. We need it's just kind of.
Test, 1, 2. Test, 1, 2, 3. Test. That needs a little more power, but I'm going to turn it off.
Okay.
And then I will take the coffee too for you.
All right.
Thanks.
So we have right here.
Okay, yeah, since we're running, you can see it.
Yeah, a little bit. I grabbed some raisins. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Just to make sure we didn't want to run out without.
Thank you.
We'll do that.
No problem at all.
Okay. Yes, good for you too.
Funny girl.
I'm organizing my things. You ready?
I didn't know anybody.
1 minute.
1 minute warning, so if you could please be seated. Thank you very much. 1 minute. Schedule.
What you looking for? I forgot to go take it away.
We're reconvened. And B, A&S is now reconvened. Thank you.
I was asked to announce this at some convenient moment of the fundraisers. How many minutes?
And we're reconvened. We are in session at this time. If you could please take your seats. Thank you. And if our treasurers, our ground treasurers can stand ready, please. First, I have the honor and great privilege to introduce, once again, our Alaska Native Sisterhood, our Alaska Native Brotherhood, Grand President Sasha Sobolov, who will share with us his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last time we were at the mic, I used that word that started with a C, which I'll not use again because I don't want to be sitting in the dark. As customary, it's important and essential that your Alaska Native Brotherhood Grand President provide you with information regarding what have you been doing this year? Well, it gives my pleasure to present you with this report. And it goes something like this. ANS Grand President Emeritus Mary Jones, ANB Grand President Emeritus Richard Jackson, ANS Grand President Cecilia Taballero, ANS Executive Members, ANB Executive Members, ANS Grant Officers, ANB Grant Officers, elected delegates here in Ketchikan, distinguished veterans in amongst our midst, and thank you for your service, honorable clan leaders and family leaders, especially our youth delegates. Thank you for making the time and coming. And other dignitaries and invited guests, welcome to this 106th convention here in Ketchikan, hosted by ANB and ANS Camp 14. This wonderful event is a result of a lot of workers' hands and dedicated leaders who have met monthly since last October 2017. My hat is off to ANB and ANS Camp 14, and a round of applause for Camp 14. Now on to other topics. When my father walked on this earth, Walter Soboleff kept many notes of the early histories and individuals he encountered. One of them was when he attended the Sitka Training School as an elementary school student. One of his teachers was Dr. Wilbur, who was addressing the young men at the Sitka Training School. And he said, if you are going to be of any influence at all, as individuals, you'll not be able to do anything. You have the power by organizing. And this is a true story, gleaned off the records of Walter Soboleff's records we have, and conveyed to him by Ralph Young. It's found on page 7 of that original historical document. In his lifetime, and even more appropriately as it occurs in our lifetime, we still have the recognition of the vast and impressive history of the Alaska Native Brotherhood and the Alaska Native Sisterhood, for we have been around a while. The people of the Western world kind of go, huh? Well, we kind of smile, and with a twinkle in our eye, take no offense, but we've been here before you. More importantly, in today's world, we have a specific gene in our brain and in our body, and that specific gene allowed our ancestors to survive not one ice age, but 2. And if were not that possible, we would not be here today. But look at this. We are here. And yes, we do communicate occasionally in the English language, but let me be the first to share with you that while we were taught to speak English by our teachers, we do not think in English. As a matter of fact, if you ever stop to think about it, we think in our native brain, which comes from inside of our souls, for which was placed there by our Heavenly Father. Our skill set is we learn by what we see and what we hear, and what we touch, what we taste, and what we smell. Everything is in our native computerized brain that only exists in us. So our skill set, it's kind of accommodated in the Western world where you say, oh yes, you're one of those hands-on learners, or you're a... No. That's their word, not ours. The primary methods of doing this was given to us by our moms and dads, and by our grandmas and grandpas, and great-grandmas, great-grandpas, and all of our forefathers who came before us. One would think that now, by Western educational standards, we would acknowledge that our skill set is valid. Having spent 30-plus years in public education, I will blatantly tell you right up front, no, it hasn't been acknowledged. And I hold up that piece of information for you because when we were a territory before we became a state in '59, it was published on the Department of Education's website. Well, they call themselves the Department of Early Education Development, that the average dropout rate of Native students was back then and still is today hovering about 64.3%, meaning over half of our Native students are still not doing well. Duh. If you've ever tried to counteract that, you'll see what's going on. Walter Soboleff, whom I happen to know, wrote something about the philosophy of balance, which outlines the items which bring our cultural world into evenness. Eagle Raven, healing, belonging, security, positive attitude, self-esteem, being embraced by our matriarchal society, and I said that wrong, I apologize. Matriarchal society, which is the center of our life. Meaning, if you are a mom, and I'm going to say this knowing that you're going to look at me strange, you can do most things and get away with it, but you better not fool mom. They know. So our elders talked about these changes. Dr. Bill Demmert Jr., God rest his soul, produced a study called The Characteristics of Successful Native Leaders. And what was and the question he asked was, what is the most important piece of advice that you've gotten? If a job is worth doing, then it's worth doing right. And to yourself, you need to be true, was his assessment. Also, you are responsible for your own life. Your hard work, your dedication and commitment will ultimately be recognized, and eventually it will pay off. So don't quit. Do the best you can. Pray for people who need help and who don't have a voice. Be upfront with them. Pursue every opportunity to extend a hand of fellowship and friendship to those who have less than you. Our beloved organizations are founded on some pretty basic principles, and that's right at the heart of it. During this year, in conference with elected senior officials of the state of Alaska, the conversation quickly comes down to some pretty basic elements for which A&B and A&S are right at the heart of it. Because it gets down to, are you able to put food on the table? Are you able to go out and gather food so that you can make it through the winter? Have you focused enough on your immediate world so that you can survive the commercialness of this society we live in today? Not even talking about the cell phones. Well, this organization, our beloved sisters and our beloved brothers, have been in some conference with the officials of the United States Forest Service. As you know, we all reside in the Tongass National Forest. And I went there asking on our behalf a couple of questions. And center of those 4 questions were, are we able to help our families and our elders and our artists and our harvesters who put on the table? Are we able to help them through this memorandum of understanding? The answer I got sounded like this. What? I very carefully reworded the statements and got an opportunity to talk with forest supervisors and their deputies and their wonderful tribal liaison people, and I said, the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Sisterhood would like to ask if it's okay to open up the discussion on 4 things. We want to be able to help put food on our table because our families are struggling. We want to be successful in doing something that provides an opportunity to put away the starvation that we have to put up with. We want to be able to talk to our artists who have to get special recognition to go gather wood, mollusks, seal skins, deer skins, because as you know, it's highly regulated and it's almost prohibitive for them to do it. And I asked one further thing about, what about these regulations that prevent us from doing what I experienced in my lifetime, not being able to speak my native tongue? Because when you do that, then you start learning your histories and your songs. And I asked very politely, I think there's another resource that we have that's under much discussion, and that is what my father called the gathering of traditional resources and traditional foods. Now remember, subsistence is not our word. It's the Western society's word, not ours. And I asked if we could have a seat at the table regarding that discussion. I shared with them that when the Herring Regional Advisory Council was meeting in Sitka this last winter and they wanted to do some change, I thought it was revealing that in their process, if you had some information about that, they would willingly take it, and you had 3 minutes to tell them. And as I recall, there were over 100 or close to it that wanted to do that. And after that, they went ahead and did their regulations anyway. So I sent out some resolutions that our convention passed last year regarding subsistence and education. And I wrote the 14 regional advisory councils in the state to their personal email at work. And guess what? They all received them. They all sent me an answer back. And some of their responses were, wow, you guys are back. And another answer said, I didn't even know I had a meeting scheduled for that week. Another one said, we were wondering if you were going to come alive. Well, we've had an opportunity to bring, with the assistance of the United States Forest Service and our Memorandum of Understanding, an opportunity to address those things which are most meaningful to us. Among those things would be the opportunity to bring a Native perspective to the federal process and be recognized on the tribal database again. I want to share with you that's critical. 2, the things we're consulting with the Forest Service. As I talked with them, I was either expecting them to go, what rock did you crawl up from under? Or I was expecting, what gives you the opportunity to speak like that? And I said, excuse me, has anyone else talked this way to you? And the supervisor of the Tonkin National Forest said, no, you're the only one. I raised my head, well, thank you. I believe we had some valid things. Now, since that conversation, there have been some things that are going on that may have impacted how they're going to go through and proceed with the Memorandum of Understanding. It will happen. It may take a little while longer, but they're not coming to us and saying, no. So immediately on the horizon is the continuing conversation with those federal people about our traditional foods, our harvesting of our natural resources on land and sea, the support and encouragement on the development of our cultural program, which includes language, songs, histories, traditions, as well as being able to have a seat at the table regarding the regional advisory councils and the much discussion which came to light from the Forest Service side on the roadless issue for the Tongass and the Chugach National Forest. Those will remain in discussion. I'll pause and say, here's that sentence you've been waiting for. In closing, on our side, we usually say, yeah, but our unique role, even though many of our leaders in 1970 went from our local camps to the ANCSA process, you sitting here today is proof that not only are we here, but we're not going away. We have been able to achieve some recognition on the federal level, which previously wasn't there. And what a wonderful opportunity to show our young people who are here amongst us today that this opportunity exists, and you're going to be, I used to hear this and it's true, the young people are going to be pushed into that process because that's how we survived. Thank you for allowing me to serve as your Grand President during this past year. It's been an honor. I cannot tell you the number of camps that have called me throughout the year, and sometimes the phone starts ringing at 6 o'clock in the morning. And for those who are not on the Alaska Standard Time, it comes a little bit earlier than that, and sometimes later, but it's such a pleasure because I recognize, as you recognize, the work we do here in this convention gives voice to the young people, to the not so young people, to those who can't speak, a voice on how we can continue to exist and be of help to them, because by our nature, our God-given gene, which was given to us by instinct, doesn't walk away from someone who's hurting. We don't tell them, no, we're not going to pray for you. We don't say to them, I'm sorry, but I'm too busy. We stop what we're doing to be of help. And that message, which is a Christian message, was given to our forefathers hundreds of thousands of years ago. And I want to share with you not to stop. My dad, in closing, would say this. He used this word, about this work. You have to fight for the cause. And so the challenge today for you and you online is you have to fight for the cause, because that's our task. And thank you so much for listening to me give a brief summary of the Grand President's report for the year for this Chief.
Sheesh, Mr. Grand President, from the heart. It's my pleasure at this time also next to introduce our ANS Grand President, Cecilia Tavallero. Do you mind if I recognize Rhonda, or do you want to go ahead? No, go ahead. Okay. She has given permission to recognize Sister Rhonda. Sister Rhonda.
Rhonda Butler, ANS Camp 2. I'd like to make a motion to accept the Grand A&B Grand President's report.
Thank you, Sister Rhonda. Could you stand, please? The seconder of the motion, state your name and your camp.
Peter Karras, Sitka, Camp Number 1, Sergeant at Arms.
Thank you, Brother Karras. There's a motion. It's been seconded. Question's been called. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. It is received. Thank you. Madam Grand President.
Thank you, First Vice President, Sister Paulette Marino. Good afternoon, ANS Grand President Emeritus Mary Jones, A&B Grand President Emeritus Richard Jackson, A&B Grand President Sasha Sobolov, A&B ANS Executive Committee members, A&B ANS Grand Officers, delegates, honored elders, guests, veterans. People of this land, thank you for welcoming me and all of the A&B ANS Grand Camp Convention this year onto your land. Gnalchish for your hospitality. You show us great love. Thank you. Giving your time, our most precious commodity. I'm always saying that because none of us know how much of it we have. So thank you for your energy, your resources, all that you put into putting this together. Shlinget Gainach, Kuyok Chu Yuchatu Asak, Cecilia Tavallero Achsayi, Ye Kadak Daintan Nachatzati, Colombian Yadi, Ayachat, Yanyedi Dachchan Chatzati, Athabaskan Dachchan Ayachat. I am of the Raven Moiety, and my clan is Dakdaintan. My clan home is Huna, but going way back, we come from the Mount Fairweather area near Yakutat. My father is originally from Cali, Colombia. My mother was one of 12 children born to Celia and Pete Martin Sr. My grandmother is a child of the Kagwantan, and my grandfather, of course, is Yanyedi. It has been a privilege and an honor to serve you as Alaska Native Sisterhood Grand President.
this past year. Thank you. Over the course of the year, I have represented the Alaska Native Sisterhood in the following ways. I did participate at a Christmas party with making Christmas decorations with kids, with our Camp 36 participating, and also with the assistance of ANS execs Mary Brown and Mary Guthrie. They came and joined the fun. There were some adults that wanted to make Christmas ornaments also, and so we had fun. It was a Haida Heritage Christmas party, which we Clinkets always make our way in and join them, and they always welcome us. I participated in numerous convention planning meetings throughout the year, as well as Mr. Grand President, of course, and along with the first and A&B and first ANS Grand Presidents, along with the community of Ketchikan, their camp. Well, I had knowledge of a new way of doing business. Uber Conference is very cost effective. You can go online and you can check out their website, and if you have less than 10 callers to a conference call, it's free, and you can have numerous calls per month. If it's 10 and above, they'll charge you $15 plus possibly a surcharge, small fee. But our Tlingit and Haida in Seattle chapter, which I am a delegate, we use that method for call-ins, those who cannot attend the meeting. So we were having our meetings, and it was costing a little bit from using the standard way of calling conference calls. So now I'm happy to say Sister Carol Dewis, who usually arranges our teleconference calls, meetings, said that it is cost effective. And yay, we have numerous meetings per month, as many as you want. Also, I attended a workshop in Juneau. It was facilitated by First Alaskans Institute in Juneau to learn more about lobbying skills. It was attended by many participants from around the state, and it was very informative. Former and current staffers of both congressional and state legislators gave presentations and afforded attendees times for question and answers. It was pretty informative. I'm glad I was there, able to go. They were actually teaching folks how to engage and run for public office. We need more public participation in public office. That, and along with some other, I'll come back to that. So, if anyone's interested, I recommend calling or emailing the First Alaskans Institute office in Anchorage. Sister Paulette Moreno and I went to Washington, D.C. to represent our Alaska Native Sisterhood at an event hosted by the National Women's History Project, which has been in existence since 1980. Each year they honor women from around the country for contributing and fighting against any kind of discrimination. This past year, 15 women who exemplify the courage and the drive that have helped women move ahead in the United States were honored, and among them was our own hero, Elizabeth Bradovich. The theme for this year was, "Nevertheless, she persisted." And that exactly exemplifies how Elizabeth spoke to the Senate in the territorial legislature back in 1942. One of our own received the recognition, so we wanted to make sure that our organization, we wanted folks around the country to know that we're over 100 years old, we're still here, and so Sister Paulette and I, with a little bit of help from Grand Camp and our own resources, we flew over to Washington, D.C., and for those interested, the award is sitting over here on the table. It's the blue marble, I think it's 25 pounds. No, it might only be 15. But carrying it after a while, you're like, ugh. We're going to be deciding, I think, what to do. Either just keep it amongst our accoutrements or put it in maybe the Juneau Elizabeth Bradovich Hall display. We had 3 of us up on the stage in Washington, D.C. We're very grateful that Nicole Hollingstead came and joined us. Her grandmother is Amy Hollingstead, a past Grand President, and one of Elizabeth Pratovich's contemporaries. And so all 3 of us were standing up there, receiving the honor and educating them about Elizabeth is going to be honored in 2020 with the her picture being on the $1 coin. There were many, many Native women, women's organizations from around the country. There was an opportunity the day before the event that we took advantage of. We called and made appointments with the Alaska Congressional Delegation, Senator Murkowski's office, of course, Senator Dan Sullivan, and Congressman Young. A funny thing, you know how gruff Congressman Young can be sometimes. He's very truthful, honest, no nonsense. There it is, right on the table. We started talking to him and telling him what we were there for, and he looked at his staffer and he said, "Didn't we take care of this?" We're talking about the landless bill. We spoke to each of the congressional delegations. I talked about the landless issue, and Sister Paulette presented them with our resolutions from convention last year. The staffer responded by saying, "Yes, we did, Congressman, but it only passed the House." So he said, "What are they doing over there on the Senate side?" So we are still working on this. I understand that it's not moving right now, but we hope to give it a push by having more people show support. We need this body, or who originally started the land claims to begin with. We must realize it's not done yet. We still have work to do. And I want to build a fire under everybody so that you guys can all come out and help us, because it affects about 3,400. Actually, it used to be 3,400. Now it's 4,200 people, because some of those shares, the original state shareholders have passed and they've gifted their shares to others. So I would appreciate, I'm going to be asking everyone, we're going to give information out on who to call, what to do. Please help us. We need your help. Ketchikan, Wrangell, Petersburg, Haines, Teneke. We need your help. Together we can make it happen. We need more things that are our accomplishments. I would love to say, yes, A&B and ANS got together. We were passionate about finishing this deal. It's better than nothing, this act. It helps economics in each community. It helps with funding for students to go to school, higher education. So that's what I would like to see happen. And I implore you, please get on board. If you need education materials, we have that. We're thankful that Alaska has helped us with Cedar Communications, Todd Antiochia's company. He is helping us with consultation. I did speak and share our history of A&B and ANS, but namely about Elizabeth Pratovich at Elizabeth Pratovich Day in Seattle this past spring. It was an honor to be invited by the Seattle Clinton Haida chapter. They have invited me many times, and I appreciate that. Many of the young people that were in attendance were listening to what the history was. Even Brother Ross Nanak III stopped in to the festivities. We were all breaking bread together and honoring our hero Elizabeth and the current heroes from the Washington area. And there was something called a coastal jam where they have traditional dances after. Oh. In April, my dear mother, who was in her 80s, Ethel Martin Lopez, passed away. And I was able to participate with Petersburg Camp 16 presidents, Barbara Erickson and Joe Stewart, in a potluck and a memorial service. It was very nice. It was well attended, and I do appreciate your help. I was able to participate in a small way, and we did enjoy the fact that a number of new brothers and sisters stepped forward. That was wonderful. That's the upside of that service. Thank you. It was well attended. After our ANS portion, we had some cultural representation by the Eagles, who warmed us with a blanket. My cousin Will Ware of Petersburg, who works in Juneau with the Tlingit and Haida Transportation, was there to help facilitate that. And I am so thankful because it did warm the heart. I also participated in my mother's youngest brother, Pete Martin Sr.'s memorial service in Cake in August. Pete Martin Jr. is a past A&B vice grand president, excuse me. And I want to thank Cake A&B for their help with the family. The whole community came together. Cake is just awesome when there's a need, just like A&B and ANS. I think we all learn it just because that's the kind of people we are. So I just want to say, chish. I traveled to Juneau to participate in our second Vice Grand President, June Dagnon's celebration of life. I didn't know her well before that, but after listening to all the speakers talk about her, she was newly elected. We were all excited about her. She's an excellent fundraiser, and we were looking forward to good times with her. And suddenly she was taken from us. And I appreciate her willingness. She came from a very political family from up north. Her father, I believe, was involved with the Arctic Native Brotherhood. They patterned themselves after us. That's awesome. She was a very skilled lady. She was quite a lady. And I'm thankful that Mr. Grand President was there to assist me with that, as she was a standing Grand Officer. Goodness, sheesh, Mr. Grand President. I was asked to write a letter of support for Brother Harriet Belleal for her nomination to the Japanese American Citizens League. And I was happy to do so. She did win in the category that she was nominated for, that of the Humanities and Education. It was a national award, and I understand very well attended. I understand that younger people in attendance there really liked Brother Harriet's spunk. We know her spunk here from Tlingit and Haida and A&B and ANS meetings. Congratulations, Harriet, on receiving the recognition for all that you do for each community that you live in. Thanks, Chief. Mr. Grand President and I also attended the Sea Alaska annual meeting in Wrangell, as this was the site of the first Alaska Native Sisterhood camp. We spoke about our activities, and Mr. Grand President talked about the Forest Service. More to come on that later. In January, I attended the Board of Fisheries meeting in Sitka to offer and show support for the proposals that were submitted by Sitka Tribe of Alaska to offer testimony. Sister Paulette and I traveled to Sitka at our own expense and were hosted by her sister, Rachel Marino. We enjoyed her awesome hospitality. While we were there, though, there was a huge earthquake. I can't remember the magnitude, and tsunami warning. So we got roused out of our beds in the middle of the night and had to go up the mountain. We went to the school, and there were a lot of people sitting there. Felt so bad for the little kids. Actually, they were having fun running around, if I remember correctly. And at this Board of Fisheries meeting, we were represented, Paulette and I representing ANS and local camp members as well. But for the Brotherhood, Brother Eric Morrison and Marcelo Quinto were there, and as well as numerous tribal citizens giving testimony of the state that the herring is in danger and the fishery should be closed for a period of time to allow the fish to grow. It was very interesting that the state biologists, none of them would acknowledge that the herring is a forage fish. They avoided that at all costs. I believe biologists from other areas do call them forage fish. Other animals eat them and need them in supply in order for their species to survive. I'm hoping that there will be a limit on the nets to allow for escapement for the smaller fish. I did not know herring live for 10 years, so they grow. We want healthy stocks so that all of us that use the resource can continue. And we need more representation, Native representation on the board. There was a couple of them on there, and their terms were about up, and they're like, we need more Native people to come on board. There is a lady, Margaret Nelson, am I saying her name correctly, who is volunteering to come to you and free of charge show you how to do it, what the process is. That's the Board of Fisheries, State of Alaska. Much of my time has been spent on the landless issue, as it is my burden that the bills that are introduced into Congress pass, and our 5 communities of Ketchikan, Wrangell, Petersburg, Haines, and Teneke are included in NANGSA. I traveled to Washington, D.C. 3 times and went with the support of Tana Antioquia, Jaylene Kukesh, to meet with the attorneys Alan Mintz and Andrew Vanderjack, not only to meet our Alaska delegation, but also to meet with the staff of key committees who will help our bill should it get scheduled for committee meetings. They need to be educated on this. Apparently they rely heavily on their staff. So if they're educated, they're able to talk to the congressman or senator and help things along. I'm submitting a resolution to create an ad hoc committee from each of the 5 landless communities to have our A&B ANS work with the Southeast Alaska Landless Corporation to get this done. What happened is each of the 5 communities formed a nonprofit corporation. So each has their own board of directors. But over all of them is what is called an umbrella corporation, nonprofit. And there's a couple of representatives from each of the 5 communities that are board members of that. So we have seen too many elders pass on without this recognition, without this education, economic, cultural opportunity for our people. The rest of Southeast Alaska, we were treated differently because of the Tlingit and Haida Act. And I was certainly applauding Mr. Emil Nadi for being the deciding vote to include Southeast. It was a monetary compensation that we got for Tlingit and Haida, not a land settlement. But because we were in the Tongass National Forest, we got way less land in Southeast than they got up north in the rest of Alaska. We only got 23,040 acres, 1 township. But that's okay. We can take it. Hopefully we can turn it over and be profitable and buy some more of our land back. Mr. Grand President and I have had numerous meetings via telephone and one in person to discuss the MOU with the Forest Service. And there's an inclusion with the United States Department of Agriculture and the help that's going to be coming out of those discussions to help our people in Southeast Alaska. I have more to report on that later this week. Actually, I think it's going to be later today. Yes. So with that, thank you so much for listening to me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love you all. Good night, Chish.
Would you state your name and your camp, please? Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second? Sister?
Melania Rodriguez, Camp 2. I'd like to second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, if we could please have our ANS and A&B Sergeant of Arms escort forward our A&B and ANS Grand Treasurers, Cynthia Lanos and James Lanos. And if our representative, the respectable Tlingit and Haida Central Council Representative Will Mickelin, if you could stand by, please. Thank you. As we are waiting for them to enter to the podium, I've been asked to make a quick announcement. The A&B and ANS Grand Camp 2018 Fashion Show will take place this evening at 6:30 right here in the Ted Ferry Civic Center. Wear your special regalia tonight. For more information, you could speak to or call the chairperson, Debbie Brentsfield, and thank you, ANS Executive Committee Woman Janice Jackson, for coordinating this beautiful event. Yes, Brother Eric.
While you're talking about tonight, I want to point out that, wording is so important. And I was looking at the feast and cultural night, and they have Native Alaskan, and, there's a difference between Native Alaskan and Alaskan Native.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Eric. Madam ANS, Madam Treasurer Cynthia Lanos, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excuse me, can't stand up, but I can't sit here and give you my report. It's being distributed on the floor, so you will have a hard copy. A&B Grand President Emeritus Richard Jackson, ANS Grand President Emeritus Mary Jones, A&B Grand President Sasha Sobola, ANS Grand President Cecilia Taballero, A&B Executive Committee, ANS Executive Committee, my fellow Grand Camp officers, delegates, and guests. This report is dated October 11th, 2018. 1 minute, I got to put my glasses on. Okay, the beginning balance at Wells Fargo Savings in October 2017 was $21,206.68. The beginning balance at Wells Fargo inside the checking account in October 2017 was $8,186.66. The beginning balance at First National Bank checking in October 2017 was $5,796.85, making a balance for the month of October $35,190.19. Deposits from Grand Camp Convention 2017 for the month of October, and this went in only to Wells Fargo, amounted to $6,263.13. Withdrawals from Wells Fargo in the month of October, $712. Withdrawals from First National Bank for the month of October, $3,021.65. The following is a breakdown from the month of October for the funds that were collected during convention. Items sold amounted in $265. The auction brought in $3,473.50. The fines amounted to $70. The raffle brought in $696. The Indian dance, or dinner and dance, brought in $1,046. So the amount of money that was on the floor amounted to $5,550.50. Now, if you add the $712 that was put back, that was a withdrawal, and you add the interest, it comes out to $6,263.13, which is the same amount above. The beginning balance at First National Bank of Alaska for October 2017 was $5,796.85. I only have checks that are First National Bank of Alaska. We do have a Wells Fargo checking account, but I have never ordered checks, so I'm using the money up from this one account. For that month, I paid out M&I during convention, and the following is what was paid out. To myself, $320. Carol Lewis, $320. Mary Brown, $256. Mary Guthrie, $256. Frida Westman, $256. Eleanor Hayden, $256. Mary Jones, $256. Selena Everson, $256. Millie Schoonover, $256. Janice Jackson, $256. Paulette Marino, $320, making a total of checks for the month of October, $3,008. The little note below is the M&I for Portland, and the M&I amounted to $64 a day. Okay, other checks or deposits written after October 31st. Wells Fargo deposit in November for $30 from Joe Stewart and Barbara Erickson for fines. That came in the mail. First National Bank of Alaska, $13.65. Those were statement charges for the month of November, December, and January. A Wells Fargo withdrawal of $3,010, and money was put into the First National Bank of Alaska in February 2018. First National Bank of Alaska, I wrote a check to Soft Goods and Green Things for felt for hats. That amounted to $225.86. First National Bank of Alaska, there was a so that's a typo on my error. That was $350 into Cecilia Taballero's account so she can travel to Washington, D.C., and that was her discretionary fund from A&S. First National Bank of Alaska charges for April to July totaled an amount of $9.11. Wells Fargo interest for April to July amounted in $1.80. First National Bank of Alaska, I wrote a check to Heavenly Creations This was to send flowers to Mary Brown's family. That was at a cost of $107.28 on 8/13/18. First National Bank, I wrote a check to Cecilia Taballero for parking in Seattle when she flew to Alaska. First National Bank, I wrote a check to A&B Camp, Grand Camp. There should be a period there. I was in the hospital and I could not get to my A&S book and pay for the airfare for a couple of sisters to fly to Evelyn Hodge's funeral. So he did that for me. First National Bank of Alaska, I wrote a check to Millie Schoonover for M&I for herself and Mary Guthrie. Wells Fargo deposit, A&S cards to Saxman, $25 for 30 cards. Wells Fargo deposit, A&S cards to Sitka, $80 for 100 cards. The current balance at the end of September 2018, ending balance at Wells Fargo Savings, $23,889.61. The ending balance of Wells Fargo checking was $8,188.16. The ending balance at First National Bank checking was $3,712.91, making a total of $35,790.68.
Good afternoon, good evening. ANS Grand President Emeritus Mary Jones, A&B Grand President Emeritus Richard Jackson, A&B Grand President Sasha Sobolov, ANS Grand President Cecilia Caballero, ANS and A&B Executive Committee members, ANS and A&B Grand Officers, delegates, honored elders, and guests. On behalf of Lincoln Haida President Richard Peterson, the Machish and Hawa, for welcoming Lincoln Haida to the A&B and ANS Grand Camp Convention this year. I do wish to take a moment to recognize Vice President Rob Sanderson from the Ketchikan community, who is on some fisheries duties prior to AFN. Couldn't be here. President Peterson as well had some events arise. Some of it you may know about, others that are just part of job that prevented his appearance today. He did wish me to convey to you his heartfelt expression of apology for not being here, and I gladly consented to standing here in his place. I also wish to recognize past Executive Council members, Millie Schoonover, Marvin Adams, past Executive Council member, and past Tribal Court Judge Eric Morrison, and current delegates, past delegates that I see here today, and any other officers, employees, or delegates to Central Council. I do wish to acknowledge your presence here. Think it's an Asian you have to yourself. Will Miklin Achtei, Tekwidi, Na, Hat City, Gusekwan, Yari Ayachat, Ganakari Jashkan, Hat City. I am of the Shankati, it's a wolf, now commonly known as Eagle tribe. My clan is Tekwidi. I'm a member of A&B Camp 14. My clan home is Tantikwan, or Tangash of the Katsit, the house of the man who married the bear, rock house with basket bay. I think Judy is the principal reason why I stand here for Central Council, because she took me on as a project when I first was elected as delegate, and I always measure myself against what I think, what I know Judy accomplished in her time, and strive to reach half as far as she did in her 10 years in serving our people. So thank you. My father is Lake Ka, a white man. My mother was Anesu. Anesu passed on September 7th of this year. She was the daughter of Kaseyei Margaret Luce Sheriff, and who was the granddaughter of Tafe Ka, Annie Brown, the granddaughter of Annie Brown, and Chantaku, James Johnson, and great-granddaughter of Sean, Miriam Brown, and Mark Brown. So I just want to begin my remarks after my more proper introduction with just an acknowledgement that Central Council is the child of A&B ANS. It was A&B and ANS's action that initiated the Organic Act of 1935, which by that action established Central Council and its trespass suit with the United States that later settled in the Indian Land Claims Settlement between 1958 and 1968, I guess, when the funds were finally conveyed. course, A&B and A&S is a child of our traditional clans established for the purpose of protecting and preserving our culture and promoting the interests of our people. So Central Council is a grandchild of the clans and a child of A&B and A&S. One thing is fortunate for us is while our parents and grandparents and loved ones may pass on, A&B and A&S will never pass on as a parent of Central Council and also a grandchild of the clan system. That's one thing we will always hold on to and will never be extinguished, but only by action of A&B and A&S, Central Council, and all of our clans, our traditional clans and clan leaders, and the bodies that we establish to promote and preserve our culture and our society. I'm a member of the San Francisco Community Council. We are looking to establish an A&S and A&B charter. We will have an organizational meeting on November 4th for A&S. I wanted to congratulate Portland for taking those steps for your A&B chapter, long-standing, and now your A&S. Congratulations on that. One of our members in San Francisco asked me, not as familiar as you are with A&B and A&S, about what does it mean to have a camp. And so I thought, I ought to ask someone. And I did. So I went to see Ethel Lund. Ethel's in the Pioneer Home in Sitka and traveled there to visit with her. Ethel's in great shape.